Episode number 46, it's called Selection. You read in Matthew 25, verse 31 till 33, when the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, he will sit on his throne in heavenly glory. And all the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another. As a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats, he will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Selection. All the signs of the times point towards the coming of the Lord and towards the coming of his kingdom, the kingdom of peace and righteousness. Then all the promises he gave to Israel will be fulfilled for Israel. He has created Israel, his firstborn son. He made everlasting covenants with Israel, at least 8 or 9. It started the covenant with Abraham, then the covenant about the promised land of Israel, then the covenant about the everlasting kingship of the house of David, then the covenant about the everlasting priesthood of Levi, then the covenant with the earthly city of Jerusalem, then the new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah, and then the covenant of peace. You find it in the second half of Ezekiel 37, and the covenant of the law. And part of the covenant of the law is the covenant of Shabbat, the rest, the day of rest. So all these covenants he made with Israel, one day will all be fulfilled. One day God will give to Israel everything he promised to Israel. He will keep his covenants. He's a faithful God. He cannot lie. He will fulfill for Israel all the promises he gave to Israel, and he will fulfill for the church everything he promised the church. And he will fulfill for you and me personally what he promised us on the basis of the Bible. So we can trust him. He's a faithful God, and the word of God can be trusted as well. Now, when Jesus comes in glory to fulfill all these promises, there's another thing he will do too. He will gather the nations before him. He will sit on his throne in Jerusalem, and there will be a judgment upon the nations. And he'll do selection. My wife, Marianne, and I have visited in due course practically all the former concentration camps of the Nazis in Germany and in Poland. It's incredible. There, for the first time, I understood what selection is. When the cattle wagons, the trains loaded with Jews, came to the camp, there was always a small railway station and a ramp, a platform. They were driven out of the wagons, stood on the ramp, and then the German officers, the Nazis, and the doctors did selection. And they simply said, left, 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 right, right, left, 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 right. And the Jews had no idea what this meant. Selection. Left meant directly to the camp, to the gas chamber, crematoria, fire, end. Right meaning you live a little bit longer. I can use you for some horrible medical experiments, or I can use you as a whore, a prostitute for the troops, or I can use you for kind of slave labor in the factories around the camp. So you live a little bit longer, but in the end, you will also go left. Selection. Once I was in a small concentration camp, and it was visited by a group of young Jewish people, Israelis. And then one of the girls started to scream and scream. And she couldn't stop. Maybe her parents or uncle, aunt or grandparents or whatever died there. And the only thing I could do is go to her and say, Am Israel Chai, the people of Israel are alive. Stand up, walk tall, take your little Israeli flags and put them on the doors of the crematoria with all the ashes. There's in that camp still a whole heap of ashes with small pieces of bone sticking out and a concrete roof in order that the rain will not wash away the ashes. But you are alive and God is bringing you back to Israel as if you raised from the dead, the valley of dry bones, coming back to life. And God has a purpose for you. In your land, Jesus is coming and the kingdom is coming. And again, He will use you to bless the world. God will take care of you. But when Jesus comes, there will be selection of the nations. Then He will say, left, 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 right, right, left, left. Right meaning, enter into the kingdom, you who are blessed. Right, you live. Left, it literally says in the Bible, go to hell. Now, who is going right of the nations, who will enter into that beautiful kingdom of peace and righteousness on earth? Which nation will go right? Which nation will go left? He says, whatever you have done, O nations, for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you've done it to me. These brothers of mine, these Achenebisch Jews, as we say in Holland, these worthless Jews, these poor Jews, these whatever, when they lived among you, how did you treat them? Because whatever you did to one of the least of these brothers of mine, you've done it to me. And if you did nothing, when they were in prison, in concentration camp, or hungry, or when you didn't even try, go left. Of course, He also meant that we should be good for our Christian brothers and sisters who are in danger and are persecuted around the world. And Christians should be good for anyone in the world who suffers. But what He meant, and you almost see point His finger, He's surrounded by His Jewish brothers and sisters. Whatever you did to one of the least of these brothers of mine, my brothers after the flesh, you've done it to me. So, the whole matter of Israel is not just a nice topic for Bible study or some points of the agenda of the church between a lot of other points. It's of the highest importance. One day God will ask the nations and Jesus will be the judge. Whatever you did, you either go left or you go right. So I hope this will open our eyes, and this will open also the eyes of our governments to do the right thing. Now that God is bringing His people back to the land and Jesus is coming in glory.